So this book, it seems to me, I think, is it your first book that's not in chronological order?
Oh, no. Commonwealth's not in chronological order, and the Dutch House isn't in chronological order.
So I've fluffed the first question. But
this is what, Anne, your second novel? Wait, what? Right. Your ninth? Where did those other novels go? Okay.
I know better not to ask. I should not ask a yes or no question. So I'm going to, this book is about time. And it is about the ages of being a woman in a way that I think is so beautiful and moving. It's about youth, and it's about middle age and older. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about thinking about time in terms of this novel, and how youth is always with you even when it's far behind.
Boy, that's a lovely way of putting it. You should write the jacket copy the next day. Youth is always with you even when it's far behind. That is so true. It is about time. I'm obsessed with time. Is there anybody here who's not obsessed with time? You guys totally look like you're my general demographic. You just get to a point where it's all you think about, and not in a morbid way, but what I have done, how much time I have left to do whatever I might want to do in the future. And also in writing, I'm going to hang on to your question and sort of come back around. When I was young, and we've been friends since we were in our early 20s, when I was young, if I had an idea for a book, that was enough. And I just was like, hey, I have an idea. This is so great. I'm going to write this book. And now, an idea for a book has to be worth my time. I have to feel like it hasn't already been written, somebody else couldn't do it better. But I'm also really aware of the reader's time and whether or not I want to take up your time to read a book. And I own a bookstore, and I get anywhere from 1 to 5 books a day sent to me that people want to read. And if I put my eyes on something, if it doesn't have me by page 2, it's out. And when people say to me, oh, no, you threw that away too soon, it really gets going on page 100. And I'm like, you are out of your mind. And so time is just all I think about. And in this book, going back and forth between who Laura is and who she was, which is really very poignant, actually, being with you, because we don't spend a ton of time together. And it really brings me back to being in our 20s, when we take a road trip and just can talk for hours and hours, and we have that much time together. And it instantly puts me back in that period of my life. Am I getting to this at all?
No, yeah, I think you are.
So the other thing that's interesting, when you have 2 timelines in a novel, the problem with that is inevitably the reader will be more interested in one than the other. And so, you're like, So as a writer, what I want to do is control the speed at which you read. So I don't want you to be racing through one part so you can get to the part that you like better. I can think of several books I will not name where there were...
Go on.
Where there were 2 timelines, and I'm like, come on, I want to go back to that part that I really like. And the way that I solved that, if I did solve that, was to make the daughters in the present timeline interrupt their mother and constantly reinsert themselves into the past. So you sort of braid the time, because I think that that's what life is like. Time is, in fact, braided.
The question I'm about to ask was going to be my last question, but it feels so...
We don't have much time, you might...
It's true. This is the last question. which is about the ending of the book. And I feel like you're known for the brilliant beginnings of your books, and this is a beautiful beginning. But the end of this book is
And I will not give anything away, don't worry.
I promise I won't. Is so beautiful, and it's about time, and it's stacked, and probably everybody here has read the book, but it's narrated by a mother, and one of the things that's really interesting about it is what she tells and what she doesn't tell her daughters who are listening. Did you always know about the ending? Because it's just so beautiful. Not the events, it's the form of it that's beautiful.
It's our town. So yeah. I mean, I always knew where it was going and how it would end, because it's not like the novel follows the play exactly, but it is the place of logical conclusion. And yeah, I always know the end.
I know, you do. It's amazing.
It makes life much easier for me. Yeah.
Can you talk, is that changed to any degree that you always think about your books for a long period of time without taking a note? Just holding them in your head. Has that changed over the years?
It's pretty much still the same. Sometimes I'll write things down. I write down lists of names. I can go back in notebooks and just find endless lists of character names. And that I always write down. Sometimes if I have a little detail or an idea, I write it down. Pretty much I just leave it all in my head, because as soon as I start to write something down, I start to get attached to the idea. And once I get attached to something, then I don't know what to do. And I can think of 2 examples in which very, very different. I didn't know how things were going to end. I did not have any idea how State of Wonder was going to end. In a Lady or the Tiger kind of way, that there were basically 2 doors. And I can wreck State of Wonder for you. You're not here to talk about State of Wonder. So the thing about writers is we do this thing that we call novel therapy, where we will call each other and say, I've got this plot problem, I don't know what to do, this is what happens. You're not asking anybody to read, but you'll talk through the plot. And I had called a novelist friend to talk through the plot of State of Wonder because I didn't know what was going to happen in the end. And I said, what I know is that Morena gets pregnant, and wait, was it? No, that wasn't it. Morena wasn't getting pregnant. Dr. Swenson was pregnant, and that Morena was going to deliver the baby, and Dr. Swenson was going to die, and Morena was going to go home with the baby. And my friend said, oh, no. I mean, we'd been on the phone for like 30 minutes, and she was like, no, Dr. Swenson lives. The baby dies. And I was like, whoa. I didn't see that coming. And she was like, and the baby has a tail. I was like, wow, okay, that really changes everything. And the whole thing about her finding Anders, I didn't know any of that. I didn't know how she was going to get back to them. So I thought that it was a book in which she was going to leave with this baby, but in fact, she leaves pregnant. That was fun. That was something different. But yeah, usually I do know. The other one that I really didn't know was The Dutch House, because I wrote the whole book and I threw it out and then I wrote it again. And so it was so bad the first time, you just, just to shut y'all up. In the first version of that book, 150 pages took place in Calcutta. Right? It was a super bad, it was unreadably bad. And actually, my great joy was that no one ever read it. So when I wrote that again, I really didn't know how it was going to end. Yeah.
Last night you said that you had the first thought about this book while you were writing The Dutch House.
Yes.
which was before the pandemic.
Yes.
And now this is a book that takes place in the pandemic.
Yes.
Can you
Yes.
talk about that?
I can, and it's no jump at all, because I did have this idea. It was just a regular summer, and the girls were home to work on the farm. This is the truth about farm girls. They come home to work on the farm. The reason that we have summer vacation is not so your children can go to camp or learn French. We have summer vacation so your children are your unpaid laborers. And that is, if you own a farm, that's still very much the case. So the girls were always going to come home. They were always going to be the workforce. And then the pandemic happened, and I was like, ooh, okay, now they're the workforce, but they can't leave. And I love situations where people, especially families, are trapped. So it just put an extra layer on things. And it's interesting, I wrote a screenplay of Tom Lake with my friend Miley Malloy, and the pandemic isn't in the screenplay.
That's so
we're
interesting.
just back to them being farm girls, because you have such a limited amount of time and you have to cut so many things.
I met Laura in the
Laura, I just call her Laura, yeah.
in the book keeps saying, I know it's terrible for everybody else, but I'm so glad the pandemic is keeping my girls here.
Yeah.
It seems like the same is true for the novel.
And I think that's such a hard thing to say, but it's something that people come and sort of sidle up to me sotto voce and say, yeah, I really, my kids were home. Yeah. And I loved being home, and I loved not traveling. And the pandemic was a absolutely horrible, horrible thing, and it was in many ways the happiest time in my life, because I didn't have to go anywhere. There were no expectations, and I felt like I had spent my whole adult life putting together an Iron Man suit, and during the pandemic, I took it off. I felt so much like a self that I was when I was young, and actually, I've never thought about this, but I'm sure that really played into writing the book, because I didn't have to be Anne Patchett during the pandemic. I could be Anne Van Devender and just be at home and myself. It was lovely.
Yeah. The book is about fame, and we were talking a little bit about fame last night. The book is about seeking fame, rejecting fame, achieving it, and not achieving it. And you are in a particular place, like nobody else I know, that you are a very famous literary novelist.
It's weird. What a weird sentence.
Well, it's
Still, any 14-year-old girl who is an influencer on Instagram peddling mascara is way more famous than I will ever be. Like, it's fame in perspective. It does crack me up, the idea of being a famous literary novelist. It's like being a famous podiatrist or something. It's like, okay, right.
The View's probably better as a novelist than a famous podiatrist.
Probably.
But you also, compared to the influencer, you got staying power. They're, not going to have equivalent of 9 novels.
They're not going to have 9 different mascaras.
Yeah, no, that's what I was actually
over the course of their life.
But can you talk a little bit about being a very public-facing, somebody very public-facing with a sort of a private job, a job that you do entirely by yourself?
Yeah, it's so strange, and it has gotten a lot stranger with this book. And I am going to be 60 in a couple of weeks, and I feel very fortunate. And this is what we were talking about in the car last night, like all of the writers from when we were young who were super famous, and I have no idea what happened to them. They completely vanished. But I don't know if this had happened to me when I was 25, how it would work. that if I am walking my dog in the morning, people will pull their car over and ask to take my picture at 6:30 in the morning with my dog. It's weird. And I think that I'm grounded enough, and again, it's a very specific kind of fame. One of my favorite things that happened to me is when I was, however old I was when Patron Saint of Liars came out, 27, I guess, and I was getting ready to go on my first book tour, and I thought, oh, I'm going on tour, and I started in New York, and Adrian and Artie took me to an IMAX theater. It was the first IMAX theater, and it was in New York, and nobody had ever heard of such a crazy thing. And we went to see the Rolling Stones concert film. And I remember sitting in that theater and thinking, oh, I'm not going on tour. They're going on tour. And it stuck for my whole life. So I always did really feel like, oh, I'm not going to be famous. That's famous. That's something else entirely. But it's still strange.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, I can even say this ahead of time, that when you sign, you said that you'll allow photographs, but you won't allow anybody to cuddle you for a photo.
No cuddling.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is really because we're not entirely out of the pandemic, and I have been on book tour since the 1st of August, and I haven't gotten sick, which is astonishing, and I believe it's because I have not cuddled. It's, so, boy, talk about a complete dogleg. It's very strange. Different authors that I know who have really high profiles, people want different things from them. There are people who will bring gifts to certain authors, certain kinds of gifts. People who want to give certain authors their manuscripts. Liz Gilbert is a really good friend of mine. She had to completely stop doing signing lines because she said people would grab her wrist really hard, and say, I'm going to leave my husband too. It's just... And when there are 500 of you in a line, that's really hard. But people very much want to put their arms around me. It's a real physical thing. And if I'm in the bookstore and there are 10 people, that's great. I can cuddle with the best of them. But if it's a really long line of people, I can't. It overwhelms me.
The thing that people not most often say to me about you, but they always say, I just feel like if I meet Ann Patchett, we would be such good friends.
Yeah, she's going to be my best friend. Yeah. Have you read Monsters, A Fan's Dilemma by Claire Didier?
Oh, no, I really want to.
Oh, it's so good. Monsters, A Fan's Dilemma by Claire Didier. I absolutely love this book, but that was a book that I read and I thought, oh, if I met Claire, we would be best friends. I never had that, but it was very helpful, and I actually did get to meet her when I was on tour, and I told her that. I was like, wow, that's really something to be on the other side of that feeling.
And are you?
No.
Oh.
No.
Good.
Not at all. We had a really nice time, and we both left, and we're like, bye. But really, read the book. It is astonishing.
I mean, that's good, because I was going to have to say to everybody here, you think that she's going to be your friend, but she's not. You're my friend.
Yeah, I'm your. That is actually the truth.
You often talk about that your books are about people stuck together, making a new family somewhere else. And when I just listened to the audiobook of Tom Like. I'd read it in manuscript, and the audiobook, which is read by Meryl Streep, and it is so...
Yay, Meryl.
It's so astonishing. And one of the things that struck me, that another of your great themes is about what it means to be from a place and what it means to feel at home in a different place, or to feel your characters have a lot of state pride, which feels appropriate for being in Texas. that they're really aware of their, I mean, I think that's true in State of Wonder, in Commonwealth, and in this book where Laura is from New Hampshire and finds a home in Michigan, and other characters are from Michigan. It really means something to them.
Yeah, I think it goes back to my love of research. To me, the very best part of my job is I get to make up a story and think, all right, I need to find out about acting in Summer Stock Theater in 1988, and I need to find out about raising fruit and the fruit belt of northern Michigan. And I could sit here easily for an hour and tell you about the difference between sweet cherries and tart cherries and apple trees, which, by the way, when you buy a fruit tree, do you know that you buy the trunk and the root ball, and then you buy the top of the tree separately, and they graft it, and then you pay for it, and you come back, and you pick your tree up 3 years later, and you plant it, and maybe 3 or 4 years after that, you get fruit off of it? So whether or not you want a high-density tree or a spread tree, I don't know. You see what I'm saying? I just am like, this is so interesting. Malaria. I can talk about malaria for... I can trap you at a cocktail party and bore you to death about malaria. And I think that putting things in another place is like that. And I always like to set books in a place where I know a little bit about the place, and I have a person in my life who knows a lot about the place. And I have a friend who lives in Traverse City named Erin Whiting, and I emailed Erin and I was like, I feel like you're with me because I talk about you every single day. But Erin went to Interlochen High School in Michigan, and she grew up on a cherry farm, and then she started a professional theater company in Traverse City called Parallel 45, making her the most handy friend in the whole wide world. But that's what you want. You want to know somebody who you can turn around and say, wait, what about this? What about this?
Look, speaking of your fame, you have a jam.
I have a jam, yeah.
She has a jam.
I have my own, that's how famous I am. I have my own jam.
There's a what's the company?
It's American Spoon, which is out of Petoskey, Michigan, which is a town that I dearly love. McLean and Aiken Booksellers, my favorite bookstore. And American Spoon, it's beautiful packaging, it's delicious jam, and go on their website and look at special products because they have a Tom Lake Ann Patchett sour cherry preserves. And how did that happen? I picked up the phone and called American Spoon and said, could y'all do a jam for me? I really want a jam. And we sell it at the bookstore, and they sell it on the website.
That is literary power in action.
That's the price of fame, yeah.
I have one more question for you, and then we can ask the audience for questions,
okay.
Which is, because we were talking about this earlier, you wrote this book while on a treadmill.
I wrote this book
a literal treadmill.
I wrote this book on a treadmill desk. I got a treadmill desk for my 50th birthday, and I use it for emails and long phone calls. I'll be on it every day, then I won't get on it for 3 months. And for whatever reason, I thought, I'm going to just give this a try. I had never written on a treadmill desk before, but I had read studies that said that you're more creative if you're walking, and it doesn't matter if you're walking in the woods or if you're walking on a treadmill. I don't like standing desks. I'm always trying to figure out how to get older and keep my body working to type. It really takes a toll on you after a while. And usually at the end of a novel, I've got one shoulder in my ear. So I started writing this book on a treadmill desk, and I think it's why this is a happier novel in many ways. I was so happy, and I existed in a state of concentration that I don't think I have had since Patron Saint of Liars in Provincetown. You said to me, when we were talking about this a minute ago, you said I like to nap while I write. Well, so do I. But it's because if I get stuck, I get sleepy, almost in a narcoleptic kind of, if I can't figure something out. But that doesn't happen when you're walking. You don't get sleepy. And I stayed so unbelievably focused. That part of my brain that says, go flip the laundry, what are you having for dinner? You've got to call your mother, you've got to answer those emails. That's the same part of your brain that says left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. So that part of my brain was really occupied, and I existed completely in the novel. And I felt every morning like I was walking into my novel. And then at the end of the day, at the end of whenever I would stop, which was between 2 and 3 hours, which really was 6 hours of work, I would stop when my feet hurt. And by the end of the book, I had a lot of pain from the waist down, my hips, my knees, my feet. Pain from the waist down is infinitely preferable to pain from the waist up. My neck, my back, my shoulders, my wrist, none of those things hurt. So I'm going to become the spokesperson for Northern Michigan and Nordic Track treadmill desks. Get the treadmill desk that is all one piece. Can I say something else?
Sure.
I want to just recommend some books. I just want to tell you what to read, because this is what I do for a living. All right? Do what you got to do. Do what you got to do. Everybody's shuffling. The first thing I want to tell you is to go to an event today by Lindsay Lynch and read Lindsay Lynch's book, Do Tell. Lindsay Lynch is the buyer at Parnassus Books, and she came to us straight out of college, worked for a couple of years, went off to graduate school, came back. I have seen this novel being put together. It's a book about the golden age of Hollywood. It's beautifully written. You want to talk about an ending. It's got one of the best endings I've read. And one thing that I feel so strongly is it's easy to get yourself another Ann Patchett novel or another Elizabeth McCracken novel. We're blue chip. You know what you're getting. But in the same way you have to support independent bookstores, you have to support first-time novelists. And this book festival is a great opportunity. Yeah, first-time novelists. A great opportunity to do that. So talking about Lindsay and this book, which I dearly love, by an author that I dearly love, and we did part of our book tour together, just be really aware of, make a promise to yourself that at this book festival, you're going to take a chance on one book written by somebody you haven't heard of before. And I would recommend Lindsay being a great place to start. Alice McDermott's book, Absolution, which just came out, I love that book so much, and I think in the same way that Louise Erdrich had a brilliant career and then came out with The Night Watchman, and Barbara Kingsolver had a brilliant career and then came out with Demon Copperhead, Alice McDermott has had a brilliant career and then has come out with Absolution, which is just a cut above. Also, James McBride, Heaven and Earth Grocery. Unbelievable, those two books. When you are looking, and Margaret Rankle, The Comfort of Crows, such an amazing book and gorgeous. Comfort of Crows, My Backyard Year, 52 tiny essays about what's going on in her backyard and how you can see what's going on in the planet, what you can do to help what's going on in the planet, and her brilliant brother, Billy Rankle, did a collage for every week. It's the perfect gift book. It's gorgeous, it's smart, it's brilliantly written. Elizabeth McCracken, the hero of this book, just out in paperback. An amazing novel, and a novel that when it came in the mail, I sat down, I looked at the first page, and I didn't stand up until it was finished. Such a beautiful book that is about mothers and daughters, but really about who owns the story and what we can and cannot tell, and what our expectations are about a novel and a memoir. I'm going to tell you about a couple of books for next year, too, because I read so far in advance. In January, Martyr by Kaveh Akhtar. Unbelievable first novel from a poet. Just put this back in your mind. Percival Everett's James in March, which is, you know, who are you? You read all my books. Like, you are my soulmate reader, right? Yeah, good work. Percival Everett's James, which is a retelling of Huckleberry Finn from the perspective of Jim. And it, you know, there aren't a lot of books that I would say, that book changed me. That book rewired my brain. I feel that way about Hanif Abdurraqib, too, if you read Hanif Abdurraqib. And one last one, in June, you're never going to remember this, but when you see it in June, you're going to be like, didn't Ann Patchett say something about a little book called Sandwich by Catherine Newman, which is about taking care of your parents and your grown children on vacation, if that rings a bell. Yeah, all right.